Good afternoon. Welcome to this Arctic Circle virtual on Third Pole Himalaya, prior to the Arctic Circle Abu Dhabi Forum. The theme of this dialogue is on the Third Pole Himalaya region and the way in which the Arctic model can serve as an inspiration for collaboration in the Third Pole Himalaya region. This is in fact a recurrent theme, has been prominently on the agenda of Arctic Circle assemblies and forums in years past, and will be the main focus of the Arctic Circle Abu Dhabi Forum this coming January 18 and 19. Before we enter into the dialogue, you may wonder why comparing the Arctic and the Third Pole Himalaya. Both are faced with environmental challenges of a monumental nature. Both constitute the front line of climate change. In the face of these challenges, the task is to improve scientific research and the quality of knowledge, which then needs to be communicated to policy making and political establishments and to the public. In the Arctic, this challenge has been met in a remarkably constructive and effective manner over the past 3 decades. That is the rationale for asking if and then how the Arctic model can provide an inspiration and possibly many examples and lessons for how collaboration can be initiated, designed, and sustained in the Third Pole Himalaya. And before we have introduced our 2 distinguished speakers from the Third Pole Himalaya region, Dr. Eklabya Sharma and Dr. Pema Gyamtsho, we handed over to Arctic Circle Chairman Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson and former President of Iceland, who has been involved in the Arctic, has been involved in collaborative efforts in the Arctic for many decades, to offer a few introductory remarks.
It is a great pleasure to join the international audience and the distinguished speakers leading up to the forum in Abu Dhabi next month on how the model of cooperation, which has been created in the Arctic over recent decades, could become an inspiration for the countries and the communities in the Himalaya Third Pole region. We are somehow accustomed to talk mainly about the Third Pole, the North Pole and the South Pole, the Arctic and Antarctica. But increasingly, the international community has been aware that there is indeed a third ice-covered, rich in glaciers area of our planet, what is in some languages called the Himalaya region, and which was given the name some years ago, the Third Pole, to link it to the North Pole and the South Pole. But what distinguishes this third glacial ice-covered region is the monumental impact the melting of the glaciers will have of hundreds of millions and even billions of people, because of the nations, China, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, and others, that depend on the Third Pole Himalaya region for their water resources, for their agriculture, for their power production, and many other aspects of 21st century development and evolution. And some people maintain that the most disastrous impact of climate change will be felt on a larger scale in the Third Pole Himalaya region. And that is why the Arctic Circle, from the very first assembly, has seen it as its mission to bring the lessons and the inspirations of the Arctic cooperation, both the evolution of the Arctic Circle assemblies and forums, but also the Intergovernmental Arctic Council, to the dialogue between the Himalayan nations. You might ask, why are we from the Arctic making ourselves partners in the Third Pole Himalaya dialogue? There are, of course, many reasonable answers to that question. But one is that India, China, as well as a number of other Asian countries, are already at the Arctic table. They have been formally recognized by the Intergovernmental Arctic Council, which consists of Russia, United States, Canada, and all the 5 Nordic countries. These Asian powers and other Asian countries have been recognized as legitimate partners in the dialogue on the Arctic. They are formally observer states and send representatives to various Arctic Council meetings, as well as attending the Arctic Circle assemblies and forums, which we have had in Singapore, in Korea, in China, and now in Abu Dhabi. And you might then ask, why is the United Arab Emirates hosting a forum on the Third Pole Himalaya and the Arctic model for that region? There are, of course, many also reasonable answers to that question. But paramount is, on the one hand, the leadership in the climate cooperation, which the United Arab Emirates has demonstrated in recent years, but also because the Third Pole Himalaya is the geographical neighborhood of the United Arab Emirates, as well as that country having millions of people from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and other Asian countries. And yesterday, I had a very constructive meeting through this modern technology, with the climate minister of the United Arab Emirates, the head of the ministry, which is the co-host of the forum in January. And there we agreed that not only will the forum in January be an important event in itself, but it will also be a platform leading up to the next COP meetings, which will be hosted first in Egypt and then in 2023 in the United Arab Emirates. So we might follow this forum in Abu Dhabi with gatherings at both the COP meeting in Egypt next year, as well as becoming a big part of the COP meeting in 2023 in the United Arab Emirates. So for all of these reasons, the gathering in Abu Dhabi is of great importance. And that is why the Arctic Circle decided to have this global broadcast, this Arctic Circle virtual, to lead up to the important dialogue and discussions when we meet in about a month's time in Abu Dhabi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following up on those introductory remarks, it should be noted that the Arctic model of collaboration, if it may be referred to in that way, has already to some extent become a model for the Third Pole Himalaya region. And the most prominent example of that is the Hindu-Kush Himalaya Assessment Report, which is a multi-year undertaking which brings together insights and contributions from 350 scientists and others who have contributed to the creation of knowledge in the Third Pole Himalaya region, and in particular the Hindu-Kush. And the lead coordinating author of that monumental report, which was published 2 years ago, is Dr. Eklabya Sharma, who is with us in this broadcast. Dr. Sharma was the deputy director of ICIMOD for a number of years and is currently the chairman of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the GP Plant National Institute of Himalayan Environment under the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change of the Government of India. If I may, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Sharma to give us a presentation on the work and preparations that went into the writing and preparation of the Hindu Kush Himalaya Assessment Report.
Thank you very much, Dagfinner. His Excellency, former President Grimson, Dr. Pema Gyamtsho, Director General of ICIMOD. It's really a great pleasure to attend this webinar today on the collaboration of Arctic Circle and the Third Pole Himalaya region. Coming to the Third Pole Himalaya region, I think the majority of area is under Hindu Kush Himalayan region, shared by 8 countries: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Pakistan. It's a hugely populated region, mountains, 240 million people, but if you look at the basins in 10 rivers, which originates from this region, 1.9 billion people. So when we started thinking, and ICIMOD was already there for some time, and then ICIMOD, with interaction with Arctic Circle, was trying to see what can be done in collaboration. So I have to say the comprehensive assessment of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region started with the invitation of former President Grimson and the Arctic Circle to ICIMOD and its 8 regional member countries. And in 2013, October, the journey started when there was a meeting of Arctic Council, Arctic Circle in Reykjavik, where there was a full day session on the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, where very high officials of the 8 countries participated. And that is the point where the very senior professionals from Arctic Circle, President Grimson himself at that time, and Dagfinner and Skoll Foundation, we came together, and the decision was made that we go ahead with the comprehensive assessment. And then followed by that, we had 2 major framing meetings in Kathmandu, and then the other one in Bhutan, where former President Grimson and all important colleagues also attended. And I'm very happy. At that time, Dr. Pema Gyamtsho was also participating, who is the Director General of ICIMOD now, was participating from the government of Bhutan side. So it was a very, very important meeting again to start the framing. And the framing was completed, and based on that, we had the steering committee, which is a very high-level committee with the representatives from some of the countries of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, and of course, ICIMOD Director General and myself. And based on that, we decided to have this outline of the comprehensive assessment. And this was a group of people who were interacting and who were also present in the Reykjavik interaction. And based on that, we moved forward, and the comprehensive assessment has taken place. Interestingly, the comprehensive assessment is not just for climate change. Of course, climate change has been a very important driver of change for the Hindu Kush Himalaya, Third Pole Himalaya region. But I think the social and economic aspects of development were equally important. So environmental, social, and economic aspect, all 3 pillars of sustainable development was taken into consideration. And during the process of the comprehensive assessment in 2015, the SDGs were again formulated, all the countries accepted, like 8 countries in Arctic Circle. Similarly, we have the 8 countries in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. And the collaboration started, exchange started, UArctic also joined in the process. Some of the elements of learning from Arctic Council work also came into the framework, and that collaboration moved forward. So it's a comprehensive, really a good networking moving forward. Now, what happened is the collaboration is so interesting. In the assessment, 350 people actually participated, and they are researchers and the professionals. And 80% of the 350 people were from the member countries of these 8 countries of in the Kush Himalayan region. And I'm also very glad to say 30% of them were women professionals. So this is also very interesting to keep the gender aspect, to keep the perspective from both men and women was quite important. But critically, the more important aspect of this process was from Reykjavik in 2013 itself, we started involving the government. So at every process or most of the important turning points and events of the assessment, the governments were engaged. So once the first draft of the result and from all the 8 member countries, and based on the assessment report was prepared. And this assessment report then finally published by the Springer Nature with a rigorous review. And in this rigorous review, you could also see very much engagement of top-notch researchers from all over the world. And it was also openly, comments were taken. And importantly, the assessment report published by Springer, ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ensured that it's an open access resource for the region, for the global community. And so it's an open access. And the response was so good. I can tell you this assessment report was covered from all over the world by print media, by television, by BBC, by CNN, by Al Jazeera, almost all. And I can tell you the download of this book and the chapters, I think, has already crossed than 1 million. So you can imagine a very good response. But the response from the government side is equally important. When the evidences, the results of the assessment came, then again, ICIMOD visited all the 8 countries to actually consult to develop the call for action based on the evidences of the assessment. And based on that, SK's call to action was developed. And I'm very glad to tell that all 8 countries actually proactively provided input. And on 15th of October 2020, all the 8 countries, actually the ministers signed the SK's call action and agreement to move forward. That was the time when Dr. Pema Gyamtsho joined as the Director General of ICIMOD. So I'm very happy that Dr. Gyamtsho was right from the Bhutan meeting, and most probably he was also in Reykjavik, if I remember correctly. And then he took over as DG. So the process is very much in continuum. But because of the COVID, I think everywhere in the world, but now I think time has come to that we had for this comprehensive assessment. 6 years of very good consultative networking, exchanging between Arctic region and other mountain regions of the world, like Alpine Convention, the Carpathians and the Andes, and of course, other mountain Caucasus, and of course, our 8 countries. And so it's an excellent process, and I'm very happy. I would like to stop here as far as process is concerned, but I can tell you the science, the professional research went a step forward from use of research into action also, by having an interaction with the government. So the SK's call to action is a commitment now from 8 countries. So learning from Arctic Circle, Arctic Council, Alpine Convention. So how the science and good assessment results can lead to a political process and cooperation is the demonstration that the HKH assessment has. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive overview. So if I may read from the introduction of the assessment report, there's an interesting sentence there which says, information on environmental, natural resources and social systems of the HKA collectively remains too fragmented and incomplete to derive any meaningful conclusions about trends and scenarios. So this is before the assessment report was, work on the assessment reports was undertaken. So if I may sum up your overview, then it seems that the Arctic experience and a view towards similar work in the Arctic, assessment reports and other initiatives, played a very crucial and vital role in both the initiation and providing a model for how the work on the Hindu-Kush Himalaya assessment report was designed and then executed. And if we now shift gears somewhat and take it from discussion on the assessment report and towards an evaluation of where things stand at the moment and what the challenges are as we now look into the future. And we would like to invite Dr. Pema Gyamtsho, who is currently the Director General of ICIMOD and some years ago served as Minister for Agriculture and Forests in the Royal Government of Bhutan, and has in fact been an active participant in these deliberations for a number of years. Dr. Pema, may we invite you to comment on the challenges ahead as you see them?
Thank you very much, and thank you, President Grimson and Dr. Eklabya Sharma, for giving the historical perspective of this third pole journey. And as you rightly heard, I think the international audience participating today also may have heard that the journey began in Reykjavik in 2013, and it was inspired by President Grimson. And we are very happy that President Grimson continues to take active interest and take leadership of this process. Now, as we have also heard from Dr. Sharma, the difference between the two poles and the third poles is that this pole is a very populated pole. We have people living in and around this third pole, and not just few millions, but even close to 2 billion people, depending directly on the resources from this third pole. Now, after the comprehensive assessment that was already talked about, Philippus Wester, my colleague, was very much involved also. He was given the responsibility of coordinating the process forward. So, I will take up from where Dr. Sharma left last year. October 15th, we had the ministerial summit. And at that meeting, the 8 ministers from the 8 regional member countries signed a declaration to take the 6 urgent actions that identify as recommendations from the Himalayan assessment report. So these 6 urgent actions include amplifying the situation of the Hindu Kush Himalayas as a very unique region, highly vulnerable to climate change impact, that 1.5 degrees centigrade is too hot and that we need to take concerted action. We need to gather more evidence and data. We need regional cooperation. So all these 6 urgent actions were mentioned there, and our leaders have, ministers have committed to take this process forward. So after that, actually, we were hoping that we could have an interactive session with the Arctic Circle in terms of arranging a study tour, a meeting with the Arctic Circle officers, but that could not happen due to COVID. So one of the recommendations from declaration was to form a high-level task force to take these 6 actions forward. So we have managed to form the task force in February 2021, and we have now task force members at the secretary level, joint secretary level, and director general level from all the 8 member countries, and we already met 3 times now. And one of the tangible outcome from the second meeting was to discuss the COP26 position of the region. So we got together with the high-level task force members, we got the UNFCCC focal persons and identified the regional position that we presented at COP26. So at COP26, we were able to, present a united voice in the Kush Himalayan region, taking 3 key messages. One, at the Hindu Kush Himalayas, the third pole, as you like it, is a global asset. So what happens here also matters elsewhere. That it is the of the planet is a barometer for climate change. Because of the elevation, the impacts of climate change are much more pronounced. Melting is faster, warming is faster. We are already feeling the crisis. We are already feeling the impacts and so on. So that was the first message. Second message, while our countries are committed and also are making ambitious pledges in terms of nationally determined contributions, their adaptation plans, and so on, there is need for investment, financial as well as technical assistance from the international community. So that was the second message we framed as mountains of opportunities and investment framework to combat climate change in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. There we are asking the international community as well as the private sector to invest in, first of all, nature-based solutions, in resilient infrastructure, in mountain-specific enterprises such as ecotourism and specific niche products, and also in fintech, in making finance more available, accessible to mountain communities, and of course, regional cooperation and international cooperation. So those are the messages that we. It was actually we presented that with the support of 4 ministers from the region and 2 heads of delegations, high-level representatives. So 6 of our member countries were present at the COP26 HKH event, and I would say that was very, very successful. Now, going forward, we would like to, continue to learn and inspiration from the Arctic Circle, and we hope that in Abu Dhabi we will get more mileage as we go forward, and we are, very committed to moving forward to forming a regional HKH council at an appropriate level that would give the sort of political oversight and governance oversight to what we are doing at ICIMOD. So I'll stop here at this stage and answer to questions because I think I have already exhausted my 7 minutes that you gave me. Tafina, over to you.
Thank you very much. So before we open up for questions from the audience, if I may ask one question to you, Dr. Pema. So a defining challenge in efforts of this kind is, of course, to connect high-level diplomacy with ground-level research and policymaking. And so if I understand your presentation correctly, then that has already been achieved to some extent and is a process that is likely to continue in the coming years.
Right. As you rightly said, this is work in progress still. We have noticed that the appetite for regional level cooperation is growing, and that there is much more interest to come together to learn from similar organizations like the Arctic Circle and the Alpine Convention. But we have a long way to go and we need to keep working with our regional member countries. We have to keep engaging with them to make sure that we even reach that goal of having Hindu Kush Himalayan Council. That is the dream that I think our President Grimson, spelled out at Reykjavik as we started this journey. So it's still a long way to go, but we are making very good progress. I am very much encouraged by the responses that we have been receiving from our member countries.
Thank you very much. So if I may, at this moment, open it up for questions that have been sent in from the global audience. It's a question from Daniel Paul Leonarsson, a physical geographer in Iceland, who asks, what are the largest gaps in research on the cryosphere in the third pole region? If I may direct this question to Dr. Pema, given your role as Director General of ICIMOD at the moment.
Yes, I think there are several actors involved in research on the cryosphere, not just ICIMOD. We have also national countries, the regional member countries, their institutions and organizations involved in research on cryosphere. So ICIMOD is right now in the process of putting together an organogram or a map of all the people who are doing research, all the organizations who are conducting research in cryosphere in the Hindu Kush Himalayan area, including universities and research organizations from Europe and elsewhere. So that is there, but we see the biggest right now is the lack of knowledge on permafrost. So we're going to be taking up research on permafrost because we feel that this is also very important. This is what the ice bodies that we see with our eyes, but equally important in terms of their potential for regulating water flows, in terms of their potential for causing disasters and so on. So permafrost is, I would say, at this stage is a big gap in our research.
Thank you very much. And if I may ask you to keep the answers relatively short and concise, and if we can have the next question on the screen, which I think it would be interesting to hear from Dr. Eklabya Sharma, given your longstanding experience in the region. It's a question from Dhanendra Kumar Singh, a PhD student from Garhwal University in India, who asks, how could funding from international agencies for research in the Himalaya region be improved?
I think the first assessment itself gives the way forward. There have been many gaps identified, and international community knows about the gaps now. So the research, I think, can be funded by international community if very much the institutions in the HKH region are able to collaborate with the European and North American or Australian institutions who are working in this region. This is one very collaborating, not networking between the universities, research institutions of the North and South. So this is one approach, I would say. The other approach is, there are funding which are more going on for mitigation, but I think in COP26, when the adaptation was brought forward, I think adaptation requires and resilience requires a lot of research efforts. So evidences and the approaches. So in that context, I would say after COP26, there will be international funding available for research, specifically focusing on the impact, the adaptation and resilience. So I'm very much looking forward. But I also would like to say the 8 countries, in that China and India, they are very big growing economies. And I would suggest we should be able to access some of the fundings from these countries for neighboring countries in terms of research and in terms of collaboration and networking. Just research funding, I would rather would say, let's have a collaboration and networking. And in that funds comes both North and South and within the region.
Thank you very much. The next question would be directed to Dr. Pema Gyamtsho. It's from India again, from Vasundhara Narang, entrepreneur from New Delhi, who asks, how is it possible to address the remarkable diversity and variety across the complex third pole region? This is really what you are dealing with on an everyday basis, Dr. Gyamtsho. So how do you meet this challenge in this remarkably complicated region?
Right. I think the ethnic cultural diversity is assets of the third pole, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. As everyone would probably know, ICIMOD is an apolitical organization. So we would like to say that we use science diplomacy, soft diplomacy, and that we are not really in the game of getting into politics of the region, but we are confined our work in areas which are of great concern, of common concern to the regional member countries. So I think all this diversity of cultures, cities have common interests, and we are focusing on those areas. We have more in common than the difference. So we try to pick those common areas, like air pollution is something that doesn't recognize national boundaries. It may originate from somewhere, but the impacts are felt elsewhere. Similarly, disasters like floods do not stop at the borders. So there is common interest, regardless of where you come from, in reducing the risk, in reducing the sort of damages that are being done by disasters. And there is common interest to conserve biodiversity, and everybody within the region committed to so many of the international agreements and regional agreements on many of these issues. So ICIMOD is well placed to bring scientists from our different countries, policymakers from different countries, to sit across the table and discuss these issues of common interest. I'm sure Sharma may like to aid to this, but that is how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if we take the fourth question, which would then be directed to Professor Sharma, because we have already addressed part of this. So in what way is Arctic research beneficial to the Himalayan area? And can the Arctic model benefit the area in other ways? This is a question from Angela George in Austria. No need to elaborate again on how the Arctic model was an inspiration, but perhaps we should modify the question a bit and ask Dr. Sharma if he could comment on if you can think of additional ways in which the Arctic model can provide an inspiration for future collaboration.
Yeah, Arctic model, of course, 8 countries, we are 8 countries, conflicting countries, but the opportunity of collaboration is first thing. And in the past comprehensive assessment, I think when we were looking into Arctic region, they were very strong with environmental assessment, and the economic and the social assessment part was weaker. And ICIMOD then very seriously took into consideration of bringing people's perspective in the assessment. I think this is how even the Arctic region also learned from us. So we also learned from them, okay, that was environment is important, but we should not forget about the people who are very much interacting, and the environment is also dependent with the people's interaction. I think that is one thing. And learning from them is, of course, the history of cooperation in Arctic region is very long. And they have done longer journey than what we have started in the third pole Himalaya region, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. So there are many learnings, definitely. I think the challenge for our region is that we have many least developed and developing countries, whereas in the Arctic, you have developed countries and The research in the developed countries are at a different level because of the resources availability and the types of skills that are required and the exchange and networking. So suddenly I think the learning is that how we can strengthen the skills and networking of the institutions of the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region, the third pole Himalayan region for future, would be the investment in terms of research and learning from Arctic region.
Thank you very much. So we are running short of time, so we will take perhaps two more questions and then wrap it up relatively soon. The fifth question is from the United States. It is by our friend David Moulton. How do you see such a regional body like Arctic Council being formed? Is it possible and seems to be moving forward? What could be important next steps, asks David Moulton. Perhaps this should be a question for Dr. Pema Gyamtsho too.
Thank you, David. I think you know probably better than me, but definitely I'm optimistic that we, regardless of what we call it, a council or an institutional, high-level institutional mechanism, but this is a process. It will take time, but the confidence is the trust among our member countries in terms of cooperation in science, in good practices, in exchange and so on, that is growing. And I'm very happy to say that both China and India are actively participating in the process. So the process, we don't know how long it will take, but the good thing is that the process is happening in an optimistic way. And I feel confident that down the line, whether we call it a council or the third pole, whatever, high-level institutional mechanism, as long as we have a system, in place that would provide, an oversight, directives, directions. I think that is the objective, that is the aim, and we are getting the kind of support that we have been asking from our member countries. So I feel confident that yeah.
Thank you very much. So we take one more question from the audience. Jimmy Cobby Ryder, environmental policy science from the Sciences Po in Paris, who asks, how could the Arctic region benefit from lessons learned in the Himalaya region? Perhaps I should invite both of you to take a stab at this question, which is somewhat different from the others.
I think the lessons, if you look at the third pole Himalaya region, I think the environment systems are quite fragile here. The mountain slopes, the elevations, and the people are at very high risk, the poverty. So you can see they are in extreme situations. People are really poor because of climate change, the impact because of the high mountains, and then the altitude, and then going in large river basins. The vulnerability of large number of people are very, very high. So in that context, the adaptation, the preparation for disasters, cooperation and transboundary networking between the countries for both research and then these environmental aspects are critical and important. So learning from here, because already some very good examples of cooperation have been demonstrated over years in the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region. So those type of cooperation, not only research, but in terms of people-to-people exchange, in terms of the skills of the nature-based solutions, I think, which is very much the other question on diversity. I think diversity provides resilience, the opportunity for resilience. I think this region has lots of diversity, and then Arctic region can certainly learn how the resilience can be built by using the resources and diversity in the region. I think there are lots to learn from here, but I think more important is how we can have more frequent exchanges and really very in-depth exchanges in future.
Thank you very much. So perhaps it could be summed up by by saying that the lesson from the Himalaya region would be not only the appreciation of complexity, but also the imperative need to keep the focus very firmly on the people living in the region and what the effects will be on the livelihoods of the communities. If I may offer, we need to draw this to a close now. It seems to me that this preceding discussion constitutes an argument in favor of departing from what is seen as a mainstream 20th century analytical account of the challenge of cooperation and provision of collective goods. On that account, they are not provided in the absence of coercion or some kind of outside inducement, where a failure to contribute to the common interest without enforcement is not a failure of reason, but an exercise of it. This discussion is more aligned with the classical account of collaboration of earlier centuries, where the failure to collaborate, even in large groups, is usually viewed as a failure of reasoning produced by the irrational, though understandable, inclination to be misled by short-term interests. In the face of environmental challenges, the key is to overcome the obstacles to collaboration and to strengthen scientific research, improve the state of knowledge, and communicate effectively to the policymaking establishments and political establishments. In other words, to communicate the reasons for collaboration in the interest of the common good. In the Arctic, this has been the approach over 3 decades. And as this dialogue has demonstrated, it has already constituted a model for the third pole Himalaya region. With hope, it will continue to, for years to come, to serve as an inspiration for institutional and regional collaboration across that vast and enormously challenging geographical space. And I thank you very much for these contributions. And we are looking forward to the Arctic Circle Abu Dhabi Forum on the third pole, Himalaya, and the Arctic model.